This week, California Governor Gavin Newsom joined the growing list of officials calling for the release of Venezuelan national Andry Hernandez Romero, who was deported last month to a maximum security prison in El Salvador under the Trump administration's interpretation of the Alien Enemies Act. We've just been discussing that. Now, the 31-year-old makeup artist was seeking asylum legally in the United States, according to his lawyers. He was fleeing persecution for his sexuality and political views. But a Border Patrol agent claimed that the tattoos of crowns on his wrist, seen right here, well, they claimed that these tattoos were gang-affiliated, which his friends and family strongly deny. His attorneys say Hernandez does not have a criminal record in Venezuela or the United States. Lindsay Toczylowski joins us now. She is president and CEO of the Immigrant Defenders Law Center, the organization representing Hernandez.
Lindsay, it is good to see you, as always. Talk to us about the latest that you have heard from your client, from his family, where he is now, and where this case goes from here.
Well, I wish I could give more news about what is currently happening with Andry, but unfortunately, since the day that he was disappeared to El Salvador, March 15th, we've had absolutely no contact with him, and neither has his family. And to my knowledge, no one has had any contact with the men who are in the SECOT in El Salvador. They are being held completely incommunicado. We have been to court twice in an immigration court in San Diego on Andry's case. And in fact, the last time we went to court, the court asked the ICE prosecutor for an update on where Andry is, what is happening, what they plan to do in his case. And even the ICE prosecutor had absolutely no answers, which is really a stunning admission in a courtroom from a government attorney to say that they are unsure of how they're proceeding in his asylum case while our client sits in a prison in El Salvador, and we have absolutely no idea whether he is being tortured, whether we have no idea what is happening to him. So just a stunning admission from the ICE prosecutor.
You have, Lindsay, the president of El Salvador coming to the U.S. on Monday, and the Trump administration is making a big deal of this visit, and of course there's conversations that say, the president making the claim, well, we don't know how we get him back. Well, put him on the plane with the president and bring him back that way, because what you did was wrong. Let's listen to Trump about sending criminals to El Salvador, generally speaking.
If he would take them, I'd be honored to give them. I don't know what the law says on that, but I can't imagine the law would say anything different. If they can house these horrible criminals for a lot less money than it costs us, I'm all for it. But I'd only do according to the law.
So the president of the United States doesn't even know what the law is, doesn't know the extent to his legal actions are in violation of the rights, the due process rights of individuals like Andry. Talk, if you will, about that aspect of this case and why it's so important for Americans to understand, number one, that Andry is not a horrible criminal. He has no criminal record, number one. And number two, coming for Andry is the next step is coming for you, the hairdresser, the small business owner, the family man, the teacher, who has a tattoo that the government deems to be an example of gang affiliation, when in fact the three crowns that he has is not that, but in reference to something that he's very proud of culturally. Talk to us a little bit about that and give the American people a sense of who Andry is relative to this idea of him being a criminal and the impact that this is having on him, but also could have on all of us.
Sure. Well, as you said, Andry, his case is really this tragic cultural misunderstanding. The crowns that he has are above his parents' names on his wrists, and they're an homage to the Three Kings play, which he has performed in his small town in Venezuela as part of a theater troupe since he was 7 years old. Andry is someone who came to the United States with absolutely no criminal history, and he actually had a document on him when he arrived certifying that he had no criminal history in Venezuela. He was in an ICE detention center from the moment he arrived in the United States, so there is absolutely no argument that could be made that he was any danger to anyone in the United States. He was someone who fled persecution. He is someone who was following the rules that were set out at the time by the Biden administration. He made an appointment, he submitted his asylum application, and he literally was disappeared from an ICE detention center in the middle of his proceedings. We were grateful to see this week that Governor Newsom put out a letter of support calling strongly on the Trump administration to bring Andry back and give him the due process that he was denied. And I was particularly glad to see that Governor Newsom asked the question that we have been asking over and over, which is, if this can happen to Andry, if this can happen to someone who's seeking protection, to someone with no criminal history, to someone who with absolutely no affiliation, if this, we're not even calling it a deportation because there was no process, but this disappearance, this forced rendition to El Salvador can happen to someone like him, who is next? It could be legal permanent residents. It could be U.S. citizens. It could be any of us. And so that is why we need to make sure that we are, standing strong, and we're glad that our governor here in California is doing that with us, to say that sending people with no due process to a place like El Salvador and, ignoring the due process rights that we have under the Constitution is not acceptable, and it results in gross human rights violations like what is happening to our client currently.
60 Minutes checked, and they could not find criminal records for 75% of the Venezuelans now sitting in a prison in El Salvador. So Andry is one of many. I think it's important, and our team pulled this from a Time article, that people understand what is happening in this prison in El Salvador. Time writes, they entered their cold cells, 80 men per cell, with steel planks for bunks, no mats, no sheets, no pillows, no television, no books, no talking, no phone calls, no visitors. For these Venezuelans, it was not just a prison they had arrived at. It was exile to another world, a place so cold and far from home, they may as well be sent into space, nameless and forgotten. Holding my camera, it was as if I watched them become ghosts. This is reporting by Philip Holsinger from March 21st.
We talked a lot during family separation about the trauma that the United States inflicted on already vulnerable populations. And Lindsay, I know that you are still in the thick of this, trying to figure out how you're going to get your client back. But I hope that you have the opportunity on the other side of this to ask what restitution looks like for this man who was coming to the United States seeking safety, and instead found a danger that is arguably more profound than the danger he was in his home country. What does justice now look like for someone like Andry?
Well, we're looking at this one day at a time. But as Simone, you say, the stories that we heard and what came out of that Time reporters' photos is absolutely horrific. We know that our client, upon arrival, was crying, that he was being smacked, that he was crying out for his mom. To hear this about someone who we have met, who is by all accounts, a nice, kind, gentle person, is horrific. And to your point, Alicia, justice, we're looking at this one day at a time because our client is sitting in a cell in El Salvador at this moment. His life is in danger, and we are concerned that he will never leave because, in fact, human rights reports tell us that no one has so far
Lindsay's shot has frozen, but we are just grateful, Lindsay Toczylowski, for your time and, frankly, your courage and the courage of the lawyers in your organization. because standing up for what is right against the United States government in these times is a radical act. We'll be right back, folks.